Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals. Ozcast.
Hello, Nest family. We speak to you at the end of a 2-win AFL season. A 2-win AFL season. Even the most pessimistic Eagles fan, Drew Jones, wouldn't have tipped that at the start of the year. I know we fought hard at the end of it, but I think we're all quite relieved that it's over now, isn't it? We can just start looking ahead to better days.
Well, I'm just so grateful, Garby, that we were able to podcast and break down the worst season in West Coast history. It's been a ride. It's been tough at times. There was that brief period during the middle of the year where we got a win and we played some decent footy against Richmond, and we weren't horrible against Carlton. Like, there was some days that were enjoyable, but most of them were pretty rough. And funny, I was thinking back and looking back, what were the most enjoyable moments of the season? I think the round 2 game against North Melbourne is up there for me, even though they lost. Yeah, just the craziness of that period and the stories that we got to tell and hear about the Waffle top-up players. And Matthew Knight's coached a game. Jake Florenko, who never met the coach, played well. Like, so many weird things happened. But I think now it's about how we respond, isn't it? You know, like what does it mean for the club going forward? I know we'll get to that shortly. What do you think about as your highs and lows of the year?
Yeah, the Collingwood game, obviously, especially when you look at where Collingwood are now. I mean, someone had told you then that we'd knock off Collingwood as one of our 2 wins and they'd be a top 4 side. I mean, it seemed unfathomable at that point in our season. So that was a great day to see them fight. And after that, obviously, the JK8, that was really enjoyable to watch. And, you know, the way in which they fought on a little bit. Youngsters like Bazzo and Hoff came through and played probably more footy than would have been expected of them at the start of the season, but circumstances changed and they were thrown into it, and, you know, they did really well. And you look at it and you go, well, they've now accelerated their developments, and you get excited about them next season. So that's a positive. A little story from the weekend that I might tell just to break things up a little bit before we really dissect the campaign. I actually saw and had a good chat with Jared Brando on Friday night. I was lucky enough to be at the GWS Best and Fairest, the Kevin Sheedy Medal. And I was standing at the bar next to Jared Brander, and I thought I'd mention that I'm an Eagles fan, and, you know, asked him how he was faring, and he won the VFL Player of the Year at the Giants and still couldn't get a game. So it's a similar story, Drewy, isn't it, for Jared Brander, West Coast to GWS. For whatever reason, coaches just don't want to pick him, even though he's doing seemingly the right things at the lower levels. There's just something about him, obviously. But I asked him about the Eagles, I'll be honest, and I was curious to know what he would say, because he was let go unexpectedly. I thought maybe, and if he had a crack at the Eagles, then I wouldn't be telling the story. But, you know, I thought he would have the knives out for people at the club. But he couldn't have spoken in more glowing terms about West Coast, and in particular about the players and Adam Simpson. Just that he thinks Adam Simpson has the players without any doubt whatsoever. They just had too many injuries this year, and when you've got an older list, it's hard to get up and going when you start so far behind the 8 ball. So I thought that was quite interesting from a player who was discarded by the coach, that he backed him in a conversation where it wasn't being recorded, he wasn't on the record, he was just chatting to someone else.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Did you ask him about his time and how it ended?
No, I didn't get into too much detail about that. His girlfriend was ordering a couple of gin and tonics, I think, so it was probably best that he moved on pretty quickly. But, I mean, I said I feel for him because it looks like he deserves more of a chance, and I really like the way he plays, and he's clearly frustrated, and he's out of contract at GWS and his career's in limbo. There's a player there, isn't there? But it just, for whatever reason, it seems as if coaches maybe just don't trust him enough when it comes to AFL level. But no, he was just so glowing of his time at the Eagles and really enjoyed it and lamented the fact that he's not there anymore. But he thought Adam Simpson, had the players most certainly, and that they really, really like him and that they can improve pretty quickly. So that was nice to hear.
Yeah, that's definitely heartening. And I mean, I often feel when I see his name pop up, I feel sadness that it didn't work out at West Coast, because he was showing a few signs early last season, but obviously for whatever reason it hasn't worked out, and then hasn't really worked out for him at the Giants either. I mean, a fully developed and fit and firing and a good AFL player of the size and versatility of Jared Brander would be pretty handy at West Coast. Yeah,
it would. But, the signs at the Giants are that perhaps he's just not made for AFL level. Maybe he gets another chance and he excels under Adam Kingsley. We'll wait and see. Another thing that stood out, and I'll relate this to the Eagles a little bit, is that Leon Cameron is just undoubtedly loved by the Giants players. You could tell he was there that night, which is a great sign in terms of how they handled his departure, and players were coming up and chatting to him all through the night. You could just tell they love the man. But they didn't necessarily play for him as he would have liked at the end of his tenure, and that's why he departed. So maybe there's a bit of that as well. Just because players love a coach and want to win for the coach, it doesn't mean they necessarily will, because Leon Cameron had been there for a while. Maybe his voice had grown tired. Perhaps there is a bit of that with Simo. They really like him and they want to play for him, but for whatever reason, they're just not getting the absolute best out of themselves more often than not. The list will change over this season. We've discussed that numerous times, and perhaps that helps Simo's voice become refreshing on a newer set of players, if you like, and we can start improving. Or maybe he just changes the way he coaches, or maybe they've hit the bottom now and then they start lifting again and it all clicks once more. But all of those things for Eagles fans are up in the air, aren't they? They clearly like the coach, but that doesn't guarantee performances necessarily.
Yeah, I often try to think about my own experiences in my career and think about how you change the way that you do things and the way that you interact with people as you develop as a person and gather more experience, and wonder if you can sort of relate those same experiences to what it would be like for a senior coach when you're in such a high position and you're responsible for a lot of people, and you have to professionally deal with them as well as personally. It is such a unique role. And I guess the longer that he spends in that role, the more that he has to differentiate the way that he speaks to the players and coaches the team. And if he is adapting on the run and modifying the way that he does things, then, I'm confident that things can continue to go well with him there. But long-term success for long-term coaches in world sport isn't that prevalent, I suppose, is it, Garby? Like, it feels like a decade is that you're getting towards the end of your time. And that's the challenge for Simo and West Coast. And I mean, Trevor Nisbet recently came out and said he's the man and he's contracted, and the Eagles really aren't in a position to sack a coach who's got 3 years left on his contract. So yeah, it's we are where we are with Simo, and he certainly hasn't let us down to this point. So I've got every reason to have faith that he's doing what he needs to do to get better.
He does seem fired up. I mean, I watched his speech at the John Worsfold Medal, and we can segue into that now, but there's a look in the eye that says he's just so fired up to improve with this team again. He admitted fitness is not good enough, and that stood out for me from his speech. There's certain things they couldn't control this year, but there's things that they could have, and they failed in that area. And one of them is conditioning. You get unlucky with injuries, but the more you look after your body, the better chance you have of avoiding them. Soft tissues, most certainly. And that was something that stood out for me, and hopefully they can attack that massively. And Trevor Nisbet said it as well in that really good chat with Ryan Daniels from Channel 7, which, was quite revealing in some parts too, about getting the off-field stuff right. And we just have to come back a lot fitter this season. I thought we did last season, and then COVID hit and that affected things, but still the amount of injuries weren't good enough. So yeah, that's encouraging, but we felt that way going into this season. So obviously serious pressure on the playing group and Simo going into this one. Did you want to speak about the John Worsfold Medal, Drewy, and note what stood out for you from that night?
Yeah, so I've just got the top 10 here. So Tom Barrass was obviously a runaway winner and clearly our best player this season. And then Hearn in second, Kelly third, Darling fourth, which I guess for a bloke with no preseason is not a bad effort. And then Duggan, Redden, Shuey, Cripps, Jermaine Jones and Liam Ryan round out the top 10. So of note, sort of the statistical achievements within the season, JK was our leading goal kicker with 37, just ahead of Darling. And then so for Barrass, he was up number one for intercept possessions at West Coast by a very long way. And he was also a long way ahead in terms of 1%ers. I guess two things that you probably associate with Barrass. And I think he was probably in the top 5 best players in the entire competition in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
That's how good he was on the way, on the turn after the bye. So a sensational season for him. Shannon Hearn, effective disposals, was number one at the club, and metres gained and, rebound 50s, all that stuff, which is obviously what you're going to get as a halfback contributor. So Kelly had the most average disposal per game, and he had the most contested possessions for the season. He also had, by far and away, turnovers. Darling, number one for contested mark. Jack Redden, most disposals and most season for West Coast. Luke Shuey was number one in goal assists, second in tackles and first in clearances. And Liam Ryan played 17 games. He only kicked 19 goals. He was equal first for goal assists with Shuey. So Liam Ryan to come 10th in our best and fairest after a very disappointing season from him probably says a lot about the spread of games and who was able to get on the park. But ultimately, the Ness medal was pretty much the exact same top 5 or 6 as the best and fairest. There was a clear group who played the most footy and who were the most consistent. But, aside from Tom Barrass, did anyone elevate themselves, or particularly from our senior group, did anyone even impress you with their season?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, obviously, Tom Barrass overachieved enormously. So did Shannon Hearn. I think the expectations are high, but we've got to give him credit. I don't think anyone would have picked Shannon Hearn to finish second in our best and fairest in a season where we thought it would be his last. We'd locked it away. Hearn, Kennedy, retire. And Shannon Hearn's going on. So he deserves enormous credit for his campaign and the fact that he's earned another season from the club. And no doubt next year, you'd imagine, would be his last. But hey, the way he's playing at the moment, you wouldn't rule that out. Tim Kelly, a pass. Jack Darling deserves a tick. I thought the way in which he returned from an attitude point of view and led the forward line more often than not was excellent. Liam Duggan's one who I thought elevated. When you consider how tough it was to be a defender, especially a halfback at West Coast, I thought defensively he was really good this year and then helped us rebound pretty well. Jack Redden, Luke Shuey, as expected. Jamie Cripps returned really strongly, I thought, after his injury. He was fantastic. Liam Ryan at 10 is probably underwhelming his season. The one that stands out for me is Jermaine Jones. To finish 9th when he had his position changed from the halfway point in the season. Round 10, we played GWS. They tried him on Toby Green. He got smashed early on. He got moved. And the next week, so halfway through the season, they put him back to defence. And he stayed there for the rest of the campaign and gave us a lot of drive off halfback and finished 9th in the BNF. So the coaches obviously liked what JJ did. That's a big tick. Andrew Gaff plays in the midfield and plays 16 games and doesn't finish in the top 10. Unfortunately, that shows where he's at the moment. But, there were a few positives there. And Jermaine Jones is probably the biggest talking point from our top 10, I reckon.
Yeah, so that's really impressive. A 9th place finish for Jermaine Jones. I think as a rookie selection when he first started at Geelong a few years ago, if you had told Jones that he'd finished top 10 in a club best and fairest throughout his career, I think you'd absolutely take that. So, and we found a halfback option going forward. And we've, personally between you and I, we've always been a fan. So it's good that he's found a home. So I went through the playing list and just, I was trying to work out who I would give a tick to for their season. So Barrass, obviously. Rhett Bazzo, we're giving him a tick.
Yep.
Jamie Cripps gets a tick for the way that he came back after his injury.
Yep.
I'm giving Hugh Dixon a tick. I think he gives us something when we need a tall who can play multiple positions. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, barely. I mean, he didn't do that much. He worked hard. He filled the role.
Yep.
I don't see him having much of a future, but he'll probably stay on the list maybe with a 1-year deal as a backup.
Liam Duggan gets a tick. I think Liam Duggan could be our Braden Maynard, but I don't does he need to do more in terms of his own personal development as a player to get there? Does he need an attitude change? Will it naturally happen when the team starts to improve? But he's tough. He can defend. He's also good with ball in hand. I feel like he's our Maynard. And I just think Braden Maynard's just one of my favourite players in the comp. I love watching what he does.
Yeah.
I just wonder if Duggan could be that for us. That's his next step. I just want more, a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's quite the enforcer, but he is, I'd say he's the conductor of halfback. So obviously Barrass and McGovern lead the back line, but Maynard's the enforcer. He sets the physical tempo for Collingwood. I'm not sure that's Duggan's role, but I think he sets the tempo out of halfback. When he's got the ball in his hands, I'm the calmest out of any of our players in defence right now. Obviously Shannon Hearn, but I mean, he's 34. You don't want him to be the one making you feel calmer than anyone else. Liam Duggan does for me in terms of our next premiership team, hopefully. And he did that in 2018 really well. So, yeah, he gives me that feeling of assuredness.
So, we know Jones gets a tick. Brady Hoff gets a tick. JK, we give a tick, sort of throw away, as does Hearn. Redden gets a tick.
Yeah.
I thought I saw enough from Jake Waterman to give him a tick on his season.
Yeah. Did pretty well second half of the campaign. Yeah, for sure.
I'm giving Willie Rioli a tick considering, he's come back off a ban and he had some personal dramas and a couple of hamstrings, I think, in there as well. But I think overall I liked what I saw from Willie. You agree with that?
Yeah, gee, I hope he stays. There's talk of him potentially got a pause, bit of a worry.
And Richmond are keen as well.
That would be a dirty move after what the Eagles have done for him and backed him, and I reckon he will stay. But if he had to leave, we're talking hypothetically here, that would be a big shame after the Eagles backed him for 2.5 years.
Yeah, it would be. Family reasons is always an interesting one in footy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like Blake Acres went to Freo for family reasons and now he's going to move back to Melbourne.
But the Rioli situation was so unique. He was supported to the absolute hilt.
Yeah. But if he said that he wanted to be closer to Daniel and Maurice and others, would you accept that as a reason?
Yeah, you would accept it as a reason, but I reckon Adam Simpson would still go, geez, come on, man, we did everything for you to stick with you and ride you through the tough times and get you back to being the player that we know you are. What else can we do? Surely that's not the only solution.
Yeah, I think I'd be dirty on it.
I think it would be pretty harsh on the Eagles. But anyway.
And then I'm not sure there's anyone else who really gets a tick unless you can think of someone. McGovern was pretty good until he got injured, I suppose, but he didn't play that much footy.
Tim
do we
Kelly.
give Nick Nat a tick? I think Nick was just so bad in that derby. I wouldn't. He's won the last two best and fairest.
Yeah. I don't think he was at his best when he was fit, and he just wasn't fit for enough of the season.
Yeah, he did miss. He missed 13 games or something with that knee. Yeah, I mean, just on Nick, he's been an iconic West Coast player in the modern era. Our most recognisable face. He's currently out of contract. The negotiations are ongoing. His body is not in a good way. How many good games has he got left, do you think?
I think he can have a clean up in the off season, which apparently he's having. Surgery on his knee. I think he can get himself fit and have another couple of big years. I feel as if the talk on him being on the decline's a little bit premature. No one's saying he's going to get another All-Australian blazer or win back-to-back best and fairest again. But I still think he might need more support. The ask of him to ruck on his own for 80% of a game is probably a bit much. But I think Nick Natanui rucking 65% and contributing massively, like Paddy Ryder's done for the last couple of years, can certainly happen for the next 2 seasons. Yeah, I'm okay on that. Jai Cully, I'd give a tick to, Drewy.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he responded really well when he was drafted and brought in. He's tackling especially. That's a feature.
Signs are good with Cully.
Yep.
And I think for whatever reason, it just feels better because we got him as a mid-season pickup. So it's like he feels like a bonus.
Yeah. So then some of the players that, will be critical of, Liam Ryan could have done more. It seemed as if there were times this season that he didn't want it enough. I just felt as if, the kicking was still there, but the desperation to chase and tackle, I just thought was wanting from him a lot this season, which was disappointing.
Yeah, I hated his season.
Yeah.
To be frank.
Wasn't impressed. Andrew Gaffrey's spoken a lot about. That's going to be an interesting watch to see if he stays on. He wants to stay on. Very hard to trade him, of course. We've discussed that numerous times, but, not finishing in the top 10 of the BNF, that's the coaches who vote on that. So, wow, that's going to be an intriguing situation. Can't wait to have Dom Sheed back. He'll add a bit. Same with Elliot Yeo. I think Zach Langdon's a smart footballer, but he also can't get on the park enough. Maybe his time's up. We'll wait and see. Petrescu-Seaton was really disappointing, wasn't he?
Yeah, he does it. He has like these moments where you just he seems like he's got some footy smarts and he seems like he's tough and he felt engaged sometimes, and then you just wouldn't see him for a quarter and a half.
He needs to get fitter. Like you speak to Carlton fans and they say the same thing. They're like, he just never seemed fit. He never seemed strong.
I just find it so frustrating because when you see those little flashes and that Samo looks good, but that's what Carlton fans have just been through for the last 5 or 6 years, right? Like they would say the exact same things. So either the penny's got to drop, otherwise it's all over.
Yeah, he's got one more season, I think, to resurrect his career. He's got a one.
Does Harry Edwards get a tick? Or I don't give him one.
No, I don't. I just don't think he had a good season. Because I've got high expectations of Harry. I thought he did really well last year. I thought he had his colours lowered more often than not.
He needs to defend better.
Yeah, no, he does. He got dropped during the season after a game against Adelaide. Like he wasn't good enough. But he's young and he'll learn from that, and hopefully he can be the player that we know he can be from next season onwards.
I'd hopes for Luke Foley this season, but I'm not giving him a tick. He had a couple of okay games. He's probably in the same boat as Harry Edwards. He needs to learn to defend better. It's like it's all well and good to go back to Waffle Eagles and get 25 possessions because you're chipping it around the back line, but it's the actual one-on-one stuff and the one percenters that we need to see more of. What about Bailey Williams, your man?
Not a tick. A pass. I'd say he broke even. He showed some good signs. His ruck work improved, but then he faded at the end. He's young. I'd say next season is a pivotal one in his career. I reckon he probably gets another look at another club if he does leave the Eagles because ruckmen are rare commodities, but he's had a good exposure to AFL football this season. He'd want to elevate himself next year big time. So a pass, but not a tick.
Patrick Naish, certainly we've got a tick at the halfway mark of the season.
That was disappointing. His time might be up, potentially.
It's interesting that he couldn't get back into the team. Like, is there a coincidence that after the nightclub thing, like he barely played again? Do you think that must have something to do with it?
I mean, we spoke about that. Maybe they just thought we're going to go with younger players and he's on a 1-year deal. We're going to push the youth and we'll probably let him go somewhere else. I don't know. But I was surprised they didn't give him more of a crack in the second half of the season. I really was. But yeah, that was a shame.
Jackson Nelson.
No, Cross. I think he'll be moved on, Jackson.
It's funny how there was an article recently someone did something about him having interest from Victoria. Trying to drum him up a little bit. Yeah. I liked his attitude to the role on Andy Brayshaw in the Derby. I liked that he had a bit of spice and physical presence. It wouldn't surprise me if
another struggling team said, let's just get a 25-year-old who's played 100 games in to be a bit more of a defensive player and a good role model. Wouldn't cost him a lot, like maybe a Gold Coast or maybe a North Melbourne goes for him for a couple of years just to shore things up. But I'd be surprised if he stayed at the Eagles from next season.
I just think if you feel like you need an experienced role player who can do a job, then, like what Ryan Clark did for Sydney. Like Ryan Clark's not really in the top 500 players probably in the AFL, but he comes in and does a role.
Yeah, you've got to have some tricks about you, though. I just think Jackson's limited.
True.
He's limited in that area, unfortunately.
Xavier O'Neill probably deserves a tick. I thought his last 5 or 6 weeks were really promising.
Yeah, finished really nicely.
And he's still not getting huge midfield minutes, but when he was given the opportunity in there, he seemed better the last 5 or 6. So he's definitely, the hard thing for him now is we'll have all those guys back next season. Ideally, everyone's fit, round 1. Then, where does he fit in? But showed some signs. Petruccelli, big cross. I think he only played 8 games, kicked 6 goals or something. Pretty disappointing. Rotham, where's he right now?
I thought he finished the season really nicely. I loved his work in the ruck. When he went forward, he gave us a bit. I think that he finished the season and the coaches went, he's versatile. I think that's why you give him a pass, not a tick, but the coaches are now going, we can play him in different areas. We can play him half forward. We can play him second ruck in certain games. He's not just a half back, which was probably the view on him at the end of last season.
Yeah, versatile sort of 188 centimetre player who can run. It's not a bad thing to have on your list. Shuey's probably borderline for a tick, probably gets a pass. The fact that he played, 10 or 12 consecutive games at the end of the season is probably a good sign for his body.
Yeah.
Zane True, nice to see him get a game. I'm not sure he's going to be a long-term player at West Coast, though. Do you agree?
Yeah, he didn't really do enough necessarily.
Connor West, where does he sit? And throw Greg Clark into this as well.
Yeah, I thought Clark would get more of a go at the end of the season, similar to Naish. West showed good signs early on and then faded, was maybe carrying an injury. Probably thought he would do a bit more. Usually those nuggety players in a struggling team shine a bit more because you don't look at their disposal, you look at their effort. But, yeah, not a cross, a pass, maybe at best. Thought he would have given us a bit more.
Disappointed to see Clark not get more of a chance.
Yeah.
He had 20 or 25 possessions against Richmond on debut. I played him out in a wing and then they brought him inside last quarter and he got a bit of the footy. We lost by 100 points, so it's a bit of a throwaway game. Anyway, I would like to see a bit more of him. Isaiah Winder probably didn't see enough of him, but that game against the Giants was promising. Alex Witherden, he's in limbo a bit, out of contract, didn't have a great year, couldn't get a game. Is he an Eagle next season, do you think?
Geez, touch and go. It's really touch and go. Yeah. They might keep him because, they just can't afford to lose a player who can use the ball like he can. But, yeah, it's you'd be very concerned if you were him.
Elliot Yeo, where's he at, do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, if he gets himself fit, he's still a quality player. I think he can. I mean, let's not forget, Drew, we sat here last year and we thought Luke Shuey's days were numbered because he couldn't get on the park. So there's no reason to think that Elliot Yeo can't get over that hurdle and get himself right and be a gun again. I'm still confident he can.
Yeah, me too. I liked the look of him in defence. So I hope that's a feature next season. Defence with a little bit of mid.
Yeah, a bit of halfback. Like it.
Shuey halfback late in the season. What did you think of that?
Yeah, it looked pretty good. I mean, he can obviously play there. I still think he gives us bursts on the ball. But yeah, he can play that role. So much of it's going to depend on players who come back. Like you're going to bring Campbell Chesser back in straight away. Tommy Cole comes in. He's a halfback. So it was a necessity thing at the end of last season. And then the recruitment's going to be so interesting. Like we're going to bring in 4 draft picks. We'll trade up a bit as well. We're still in for Luke Jackson, apparently. Can't see it happening, but found that interesting from Trevor Nisbet's interview. So there's going to be a lot of movement, I think, player-wise from us.
I found the Luke Jackson thing so interesting. Like everyone has been reporting that he's going to Fremantle as if it's just signed, sealed, delivered. Well, so what would there possibly be to be gained from Nisbet saying that publicly if we weren't actually in the mix?
Drive the price up on the Dockers a little bit.
I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting tactic. Like, I rate that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Are we getting strung along by Jackson like that? It's really interesting, isn't it?
I reckon
did Did Nisbet say they're using like play alongside Nick Nat because he was your idol as like a bit of a carrot?
No, they were saying, no, he was asked, what's the pitch? If you're pitching to Luke Jackson, it was a good question. What would you pitch him? Because look where the Dockers are at right now. How could you sell it to him? And his sale was, you get the chance to work with one of the best ruckmen of the last decade in Nick Natanui and learn your craft under him and be a part of the next wave coming through and be the successor to Nick Nat as opposed to Freo. I mean, if you're Nizzy, you're going, well, yeah, we're up against it, but it's going to be tough for Freo to maybe get this deal over the line. Also, it doesn't really make as much sense for them from a list point of view, apart from them being very young, because you've got Sean Darcy already. And Luke Jackson, you speak to Melbourne fans and they go, Luke Jackson is not a forward. If Freo are hoping for Luke Jackson to come in and be that forward option that they're lacking, that's not necessarily going to work out. It doesn't come naturally to him. Ruck work does. But they've got Sean Darcy. So how do you make it work? And do you want to spend that money for a player you don't necessarily need? So if it all comes down to the boil and for whatever reason it falls over, which I don't think it will, then maybe we'll be the Stephen Bradbury and we'll float through and we'll steal him.
Isn't it funny how it just makes so much more sense for him to go to West Coast with Darcy at Fremantle, yet all the noise has been about Freo.
Yeah.
And he played for East Freo and he's from sort of south of the river or whatever, so maybe there's some links there.
But if you're him, you're like, if you're going to Freo, you're going to challenge for the next 5 years and you're not going to challenge for 5 years at West Coast.
So Simon Goodwin said when they drafted Luke Jackson, well, yes, he's a ruckman, but we're not actually quite sure what we're going to do with him. Maybe he'll end up being an on-baller because his background is sort of playing basketball. You're always around the ball. Like, basketball cliches in footy are sort of a bit tired, but he looks better when he's around the footy rather than in the forward line trying to work out where to go and what to do. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Just on recruiting pitches, I just want to tell this quick story because I loved this. I was chatting to Ruby Slisher, who plays for the AFLW, Collingwood. He plays for Collingwood in the AFLW. And she said Sydney pitched to her to come and be one of their expansion recruits.
Yep.
And Scott Gowans is the former Magpies coach, and he got Isaac Heaney to text her after she'd left and was going back to Melbourne because he knew that Schleicher loved Isaac Heaney, had little sort of fun crush on him, celebrity crush, footy crush, whatever. And they sort of use Heaney to try and lure her over just by texting her and being like, oh, hey, Ruby, please come and join our club, blah, blah, blah. There'd be so many great stories like that we never get to hear. Yeah. It would be interesting to go inside and sort of work out what the Eagles are saying to Luke Jackson and others who they're trying to get to the club. But ultimately...
Cameron Zerha was the interesting one I saw over the weekend.
Yeah, well, he's Western Australian and he's out of contract and all this, it's all like Essendon, big money offer, blah, blah, blah.
I mean,
Zerha would be a great fit at West Coast.
Yeah, I mean, I think Clarko keeps him at North.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, he's a really good player when he's up and going. I would love that, but can't see it happening. Tom Barrass wins our Nest medal, unsurprisingly. Cruised away with it towards the end. So Nick Natanui won the inaugural. Tom Barrass wins the second, and it wasn't even close in the end. He absolutely killed it. So well done to Tommy Barrass. I mean, a shame that he didn't make the All-Australian team, Drew. We should mention that. But Sam Taylor was the lock by the end. It was always going to be between Barrass and May, and as brilliant as Tommy was in the second half of the season, maybe Stephen May edged him over the course of the campaign. But I reckon it would have been really close. I reckon it would have been close to being split in that All-Australian selection room.
Yeah, it's always hard trying to separate and differentiate between those guys. I mean, the fact that Sicily didn't make it, to me, was a surprise. But, there's a lot of great candidates. And May, what he brings to the overall picture with his ball use and the way that he sort of runs that back six, and then the fact that Melbourne are winning games, maybe that May looks a little bit better with those intercepts when the midfield put so much pressure on. Like Barrass, he was just holding up his end, and it was a tidal wave of ball coming at him. He was superb. What a great season from Tommy Barrass. And yeah, I've got serious man love for TB, I've got to be honest.
Yeah. I loved your call. Call of the year was Tom Barrass for captain. I would love that from next season. I really would. I think it would be fantastic. Yep. I think it is time for Luke to maybe step down and hand it over to someone else. It feels like it's run its course. Not sure if that will happen, but it feels like we need to make kind of a move like that to signal that, yeah, maybe we are a little bit long in the tooth in everything that we've done, and we need to change things up. Doesn't change the importance of Luke Shuey to the team, but we need a fresh approach in leadership a little bit. Simo's staying on, but let's bring in a new skipper. I think that move should happen, but it doesn't seem like there's any noise in that regard.
Yeah, so I guess now we can cast our minds forward. So hopefully we can do some chat about trade rumours and draft and all different bits and bobs coming up, Garby. But thanks for the season 2022. It's been a real blast. Talking about getting flogged.
Without the bad times, you can't enjoy the good times, Eagles.
No, that's true.
We all know about that. So,
an AFLW team won on the weekend as well.
That was great.
Kicked 4 goals in the last quarter, stormed home. Must be the first time ever that the Eagles AFLW team has won and the Dockers have lost on that same weekend. So nice that the girls to get the job done. Yeah, it was really good. The new recruit Ella Roberts looked awesome. Yeah. Actually, I bumped into Hamish Brayshaw at the AFL Awards night, who was there because Andy was obviously touted to win a couple. And he said she's an absolute gun. She's played footy since she's 4 years old. She's been the best player in her age group the whole way through. She's got to get through that little thick period about adjusting to being part of a team and maybe not the big dog. But looks like she's going to be a star. So we've got a good one there.
Good work. Drewy, thanks so much, mate. Thanks to all the listeners. And we'll keep you updated through the off-season and on to bigger and better things next year with the Eagles. Thanks all.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.